Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you. Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 107. I've got Caitlin Peters, who is a translator. She's fluent in English and Spanish. She's also very much an advocate of freeing Cuba. But we're going to talk about one of the favorite topics right here. This will be the 13th show. Javier Milei. How are you, Caitlin?
Great.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll take a look at his interview with Tucker from last year. How did you get into all this?
So how did I
become a libertarian or become in favor of free markets?
Became a libertarian? I guess I could really argue. My mom was a libertarian, so like way back when the party started. So she taught me at an early age, taxation is theft. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and how horrible government institutions were. So just by the time I turned 18, I'm like, I want to be a libertarian. I want government out of our lives, or at least so small where they can't ruin our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Did your family come from Cuba, or do you have a connection there, or what's your connection?
Actually, because I'm in California, so there's some Cubans here.
Yeah.
But I made friends with a lady at church who is from Cuba and hasn't been there since the 70s and made a life here, but totally hated the Castros and what they did to her country. And that's what made me kind of excited about Cuba. And like in my university studies, they try to tell you, because if a lot of professors, I'm sad to say, are the left and think, oh, wow, 1959 happened in Cuba and everything was great. And no, it just got worse since the revolution that Castro started.
Oh, yes, I can imagine. So now we'll get on to topic. When did you first learn about Javier Milei?
So I'd say it was like 2020 or 2021 when we had the COVID lockdowns.
Yes.
And Martha Bueno and Zach Foster had a show on Wednesday nights called Libertarios Hispanos, or Latin libertarians, they called it, but they had a Spanish one first. And they talked about him and played clips, and he's Viva la libertad, carajo! And I love that. Like, long live liberty, god dang it. Or God, well, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear. I don't want to
Go ahead.
God damn it, fuck it, live liberty. And they analyzed one of my other favorite quotes of his, where it's like, I didn't come to guide sheep, I came to wake up lions, because I think, we don't want to be sheep just following other people's rules, or these rules that politicians impose on us. So, getting people excited about thinking about themselves for a change.
Martha had Martha on for 100, so she talked a lot about Milei. She's certainly been. Sounds like she at least knew him even. So I've had a few people who know him, or at least have talked with him, economists and people like that. But yeah, it's you saw the Tucker interview. I'd like to see what we can ascertain from this. The Tucker Carlson interview has over 400 million views on Twitter. I mean, what do you think? Who do you think is watching this video? Is it Americans? Because Tucker's talking in English, but it looks like it's dubbed, I guess, because Milei doesn't know English, right?
I've never heard him speak
it's subtitled.
English.
Yeah, he's answering in Spanish, but it's subtitled. But yeah.
Yeah, if you'd noticed, they each had, Tucker and Milei had little headsets. So there was somebody on there. There was an interpreter speaking to Milei, translating what Tucker said into Spanish so they could hear each other. Yeah. And then, so that was really cool. I mean, even though you didn't get to see the interpreter doing their work, but
yeah,
it made the conversation flow really well.
Yeah, it makes it flow really beautifully. It's you'd never know they were, and of course they put the subtitles up. I don't know if they released a Spanish version of that where they put subtitles on Tucker, but that would.
I hope so. I certainly hope they did.
Yeah. Did you catch anything that you thought was translated wrong or anything like that? Or
I thought it was done very well. I thought it matched everything correctly because I know subtitles. I don't want to get too like technical, but there's a lot of rules about how many um characters and things you can put because the goal of subtitles is to make it readable. How quick can you read everything? So I thought it was done really well.
Well, let's see what we can do. I think this will be okay with fair use. It's so many people watching it. Yeah, Tucker says. In fact, I'm gonna leave the sound up. We're just gonna watch the captions.
Yeah, that might be good so we don't get too much going on at the.
Yeah, he talks about how rich it was, the faded grandeur of a once great city, desperate country, and in a shambles for has been for a long time. So I don't. You figure out where he's standing here? He looks like he's looking over the Buenos Aires. So
And they were across from. They don't have the White House like we do in the United States. They have the Pink House.
yeah,
Where the president lives. So I thought that was interesting.
yeah. He talks about looking over the city and how hyperinflation is impacting things. People pull out bricks of local currency, the pesos, to pay, and like Weimar, Zimbabwe, that makes sense. A developed country that's moving backward. Really, it's been moving backward for a while, though. But yeah. And frustration, particularly among poor people. And a man called Javier Milei is poised to become the next president. Former soccer star, a goalie, did a Rolling Stone cover band. These are things I did not know about Milei. I don't know why Tucker feels the need to say stuff like he wouldn't fit in the Cato Institute. What was the whole point of that?
I don't know because I did not find anything about Cato Institute saying anything directly about him. Someone did write about the dollarization of Argentina and how that would be a good thing. So that suggested to me that the Cato Institute was for one of Javier Milei's policies.
Yeah. I also listened to a panel of three, looks like they were his three Spanish-speaking economists who were talking about dollarization. So yeah, I don't know what the whole point of slamming Cato is there. That's it just seems like you're slamming people who at least might be friends some of the time. But yeah, which has attacked him for liking Trump too much. And I don't know where Tucker's getting that. He must have gotten some. Maybe he got some source somewhere. But
yeah, maybe I don't.
Yeah. Now he's moved from basically nowhere to, in the last several years, to become maybe the most famous person in this country. Well, yeah. Well, Messi's more famous, but yeah. The election is next month, and it seems he's likely to win. So, yeah. The reception he's gotten from the press in the West, particularly in the U.S., New York Times, Washington Post, Financial Times, again, I don't know why they describe so far right. Well, they describe everybody as a Nazi as they don't like, so that's no big deal if they do that. So
yeah, I mean, even me in high school, because I said I was libertarian. Oh, you're right there on the spectrum. You're like right next to Nazi. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, I honestly, it seems like there are so many. It's almost as if Homo sapiens just cannot see more than dichotomies. Everything is two-sided to them, and there's not a third side. I don't know what is up with that. But so, and the left has always been that way. Mm-hmm. If you're not with them, they don't see any difference, which makes no sense to me.
I don't.
Yeah,
it's like they got tunnel vision. They can't see like outside of.
Well, one thing we know, one messy Twitter account has over 1.3 million followers. So that's more than Milei. But I'll tell you what, he's up in the 900,000s. He's getting close.
Yeah, and he was a goalie when he played soccer. I don't know if that's why. I mean, so you can't compare Messi, who scores the goals, to the guy that stops the other guys from scoring the goals. So.
Yeah, the goalie's the one guy that everybody notices, though, because he's always on stopping the goals. But yeah, I think that's given Milei a cool factor. Being in a band, playing sports, it makes him cool, Whereas a lot of libertarians can be very nerdy, and I don't think that helps the cause. What do you think?
I think because some people, I mean, I value people that are smart and educated, but sometimes they can't resonate with other people. They're so into their theory or they speak, maybe using words that maybe an average person wouldn't understand. So that can get lost in, people's understanding, or lost, I guess you could say lost in translation if you wanted to. But Milei, he's not afraid to swear, which I think is awesome. I know that's why they compare him to Trump, because he doesn't care. Like, I'll use my freedom of speech and swear. But he's smart. But then he explains things in a way to people understand. So, like, he uses a lot of metaphors. I don't know if we want to skip too far ahead in the Tucker video, but talking about socialism and why people are seduced by socialism, and talked about frog in the water. And it's like, okay, there's a frog and it's in the water, and somebody's turning up the heat in the water, and the frog's just like, okay, and doesn't notice until, ooh, it's too late and it's scalding hot, and then the frog dies.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, that's definitely. So yeah, let's go back to Tucker. So yeah, right across from the pink house, and he didn't seem very radical, but yeah. So considering what they're doing now in Argentina, so here he is. Yeah, yeah. I guess this is a fairly standard way to do this. You got these guys. Now we're not getting the captions, so that's an issue here. Hold up. Yeah. We're getting Milei's captions. Yeah. 2 ways of explaining this popularity of socialism. Or his popularity, personal background. He says, I've been a soccer player. Sang in a rock band. I'm also an economist, yeah. And maybe that's, the fact that he's done all these different things that just makes him attractive.
Yeah, I mean, some ladies love his hair, and what I loved what he said about his hair. I mean, he said, I just take a shower and it just, falls where it falls, and the invisible hand. So he quoted like an Adam Smith thing, just styles it for me. And yeah, I guess men, they can look sexy with messy hair. Obviously, for women, not the same.
Well, you know what's interesting too? He still has really a healthy head of hair too. I mean, I was 22 or 23, and I already noticed my hairline was receding. And the first thing I noticed is I couldn't see my hair anymore. I actually, when I was a teenager, I could look up and actually see my hair, but then I stopped seeing my hair, and it's like, uh-oh. Yeah. I mean, he's about 50. He's in his early 50s, and he could definitely pass for being younger than he is.
Mm-hmm.
Which probably helps his cause. Yeah. Argentina has embraced socialist ideals for the last 100 years. Yeah, that's true. And liberalism is a natural form.
Yeah, I was reading over the history of Argentina, and it's sad because they cite it's Juan Bautista Alberdi, who is like the father of liberalism, and he wrote the Constitution of Argentina like back in 1873. So that's how far away they've been, at least from the beginning. It's just
And I love that liberalism is being used down there for liberty. I so appreciate that. And rebelling against the status quo, yeah. So we've got no captions on Tucker, unfortunately, right? Yeah. Yeah, Tucker's got the earpiece, yeah. So. Tucker, I wonder how much effort Tucker puts into his hair.
That's another interesting. That's a great question. I don't know.
Yeah. Argentina began over 100 years ago, which unfortunately is when a lot of people started embracing socialist ideas. And now he's going to the frogs in a pot of water. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite metaphors of the whole thing.
Yeah.
Socialism, it's like at the beginning, everybody's all excited and yay. And there's going to finally be equality or justice for people, maybe, working class poor people. And then it just keeps getting worse, and then you get down that
Mm.
slippery slope where it's like it's hard to come back. And I think Argentina is obviously clearly at that point where it's, I mean, I think he's the guy to do it. If I think he can still win the election. I mean, it seems like he's still, even in the primaries, he was like at least 10% ahead. And I know the second round, he has to be at least 10% ahead.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be Massa or Bullrich will be close to him. But then Massa is a friend of the Kirchner family, and nobody in Argentina, I mean, most people know what she did, right? Fraudulent activity with money. So I don't think they would trust her anymore, or anybody associated with that whole thing. I would hope.
Yeah. And he talks about how socialism, seems seductive, but then he just says it's very. Then he just says it's begin with seems attractive, but then. Yeah. Do you know where they are by chance?
I don't know where they are besides across the street from the Casa Rosada, or the pink
Actually,
house.
a terrifying way. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm guessing they're in Buenos Aires somewhere, but I don't know.
He's taking on where there's a need, there's a right. That's a problem. I mean, this to me is huge because there can be infinite needs, but someone always has to pay for those rights. And the resources that are finite. I mean, this to me is huge because rights are political concepts that define actions that you can and cannot take. It's become probably the most abused word in politics now.
Mm-hmm.
You have a right to talk. You have a right to meet with people. You have a right to associate with people. But instead it's been, oh, I have a right to healthcare. I have a right to food. And it's like, no, you don't have rights refer to actions, not things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm more of a natural rights kind of person,
Yeah.
life, liberty, property. And then it just gets worse because if there's more people saying, well, 1 million people say they have a right to food, and they don't want to work for it or try to get, create something better.
Yeah.
Which I know in Argentina, that's another thing that because of these socialist policies and the inflation, where your money goes way up, down, all over the place, and that you don't know how much something is going to cost. So you go to the store, and it's like, okay, you want to buy an apple, but maybe last week it was $1 for example, and then this week you scan it and it's like $10, and it's like, oh shoot, I can't pay for this. Then you have to bring it back. It's just it's embarrassing. It's sad. How do you budget your money? Like common sense things that other countries like us here take for granted. I mean, we feel a little bit of inflation, but them, it's just like, I can't even imagine what it's like to be in Argentina as an Argentino.
And you can't plan anything. You can't, everything has to be bought. I mean, you can't finance a car. You can't mortgage a house. It creates all kinds of issues. He says, and he talks, and my favorite analogy of rights is when somebody says, I don't just want to own a gun. I want the government to pay for my guns. And then somebody says, well, said that's not what we mean. You have a right. And then finally says, oh, that's how rights work. But he says, that sparks a conflict between infinite needs and finite resources. Yeah. And this is basic economics that he understands. And the conflict is easy to resolve through economic freedom and private property. Thank you. I mean, he gets it. And this is a natural mechanism to resolve this tension in a society. Mm-hmm. But the socialists don't much like the individual hands. They prefer the claws of the state. I love that.
Yeah. I was like thinking, it's a great visual.
Yeah. Hide it behind the discourse of social justice. And their techniques are the same everywhere. And it's deeply unjust. Because it's premeditated by unequal treatment under the law and preceded by robbery. Oh, he gets it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I think socialism, like they try to say, okay, we're feminist, we're pro LGBT, and those are all good things, but then they create, like, for example, I'll just I'm a woman. So they said in Argentina they have a ministry for women, but then it doesn't do anything for women.
Yeah.
It's like, it would be great if it did, but it doesn't. Where he was talking about, well, they just sing songs. I'm like, okay, songs are great, but if you're not going to help women, get jobs or be prosperous or be happy for the most part, be happy, then what are you doing? Just saying, oh, women, yay, we love women. You trying to treat women like we're inferior or something. I'm not a fan of that. And they try to,
Yes.
I want to be respected because I'm a person with like a brain with skills, not, oh, you're a woman, so you're going to earn less, or you're a woman, so we're going to hire you because of what my gender is. And that's kind of where these socialists are, just, oh, we pretend to like you, pretend to give you, hand you out something. It's like, no.
They pretend to like people that they actually hate. Okay, yes, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. In theory, it is supposed to deal with women's issues, but but when you look for the results, you aren't there. You don't find there.
And I would say compared to, because people love to compare Milei to Bolsonaro or Trump, I would say out of those three, he is the ladies' man. Trump never I mean, we could tell the other two have never been nice to women on TV or said nice things. But Milei, his whole campaign team, if we talk about the three people, if you talked on the other shows about who kind of supports him or his running,
Yeah.
his sister, I mean, he's really, really close with his sister. I
Yeah.
was reading, some people think, oh, well, she's into tarot cards and that's how they're going to decide the future of the country. It's like, I don't think he's going to listen to that side of things.
Yeah. I've never heard the tarot card accusation, but that's something, that.
Yeah, like, because she's kind of mystic, sort of like he
Yeah.
is, but I don't.
Well, yeah, and for whatever reason, that's also something that seems to appeal overwhelmingly to women. Stuff like astrology and tarot cards. I don't know exactly why that is, but yeah.
I
And he
mean,
says, again, one of the great achievements is equality under the law. Tucker was laughing there for a minute, so I think he was liking what he's hearing. I'm, I'm, and then this kind of ministry is, as Milei says, why isn't there a ministry of men? Yeah, yeah. I wonder how this impacted Tucker. I would love to know if it changed. If there is true equality under the law, what we need is to enforce the law, not to create a ministry of women. That's what Milei says. It's based on a false premise that is totally false. Yeah. I don't know what he means by a glass ceiling for women and women earn less than men. So all businessmen are pigs. That's only care about making money. Yeah. If that were the case, and all only care about making money, then why aren't all offices swarming with women?
yeah, and then I'd say the businessmen are pigs. I mean, what about successful business women? It's like you're slapping us in the face for a woman that's like a CEO and makes a lot of money. Like, and
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know how that works out if you have, but I see a lot more women in business nowadays than you used to, but it's definitely getting interesting. So we're about, it's fairly even proportional. Yeah. So I don't know why Tucker, yeah, this was kind of a rabbit hole I didn't want to go down to, but it seems like it's a matter of the decisions that men and women are making. Yeah, he's right about that. Yes. Correct for the professional line of work. Yeah. The pay is actually even. Yeah. All these regulations and restrictions that these organizations, the Ministry of Women, promote, yes, create positive discrimination or affirmative action. That's discrimination. And I don't know if it's the same in Argentina, but also if you look at some of the professions men go that are heavily men, or men also go into the much more dangerous professions than women do. I mean, you're more likely to see men do logging work or men working as fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I mean, and that's the trade-off. It's, you get higher pay because there is a risk involved. He's sitting. Did you notice how he was sitting? He's kind of sitting on the edge of the chair, whereas Tucker's kind of sitting back. I wonder if that's Milei was really excited and Tucker was more relaxed, or what do you think of that?
I think, well, Milei seems to be, I mean, a lot of footage that I've seen of him, he's very bold, very passionate, so maybe he's just kind of, you know, high energy. And some people, they like to be on the edge of their seats, because I don't know if he's got a nerve. He never seems nervous to me. He seems like confident. I don't know. I mean, he's just more high strung and like really, really energetic. So I don't know if that's why you'd sit on the edge of your seat, or I know he was abused a lot, like as a child. I
Yeah.
don't know if that kind of was a nervous thing from his past or anything. And I feel like American people, I don't know. Every time I see a journalist, they're just like back in their seat, just hanging out. This
Oh,
there.
yeah. Well, Milei's talking more. Maybe that has to it. Tucker's just kind of sitting back and listening. So yeah, so
Mhm.
let's see what happens here. Okay, yeah. He says it's offensive to women, which because it means treating them as lesser beings, which is truly abhorrent. Yeah. And it also encourages counterproductive behavior. Yes, and said it's the same old story. Yeah. All state action causes more harm than what it is supposed to correct. Yeah. And he talks about trying to fix a problem with rents, passing a law on rentals, and fix the problem of hunger. And now there's more poverty. Yeah, he seems to just say that it doesn't work every time. He's making more of a practical case here. Every time the state takes action, it's a violent action that harms the right of private property and in the end limits our freedom. The end result is much worse than how things were before. The Ministry of Women would only hurt women, except those who are state employees.
Yeah, because that's the same. That's the game that I mean, we know too well. Rules for thee, but not for me. So politicians, they're always the exception to the rule. They're always financially secure, or don't have to worry about they're starving to death or their rent's too high and they can't pay for it. But then I feel like Argentina is like a toxic system. If you can't pay for a house unless you have briefcases of cash, so you
Yeah,
have to rent because you can't own anything because you
yeah.
don't have the money.
Well,
And
what I
then
hear a lot of, yeah, I hear a lot of this stuff. They actually do it in dollars now, anyway.
there was, I know you can exchange. I mean, I know Tucker did where you exchange the pesos for or exchange the American dollars for pesos, and it was in a previous episode when he was in Argentina.
No,
It was worth seeing if anybody wants to see episode before this one, which this one's 25, I believe, on
yeah,
X, and then 24 it was like just Tucker hanging out in Argentina, and there's these cuevas or caves where you can go exchange money. And he had $100 American bill, and he exchanged it for the pesos, which obviously was stacks and stacks and stacks of. Well, it wasn't. Yeah, it was like that. So if they're getting dollars, we're gonna assume that you could probably do the opposite, where you could exchange pesos for dollars. I know a lot of Argentine people who can save their money in dollars because it's like they trust it more than their own currency. So hence my reasoning behind why they should dollarize. Also, I think they should accept Bitcoin as an option as well for people, because anything is better than that, obviously, as we've talked about, better than their currency.
yeah.
I
There's definitely some Bitcoin action going on, and as people point out, there's already a lot of dollarization to begin with, just because it's seen as the better alternative. So let's go back. So he was talking about liberalism, and the word liberal has been abused in America, which he's correct about. Tucker's smiling, so he says, "So let me say libertarian. We believe that liberalism entails the unrestricted respect for the lives of others, rooted in a principle of non-aggression, yes, and the defense of life, liberty, and property. And if we cleave these ideas of liberty, one of the most fundamental aspects is the right to life. So we're going to go into the abortion issue. I'm in favor of the right to life. Beyond that, is there's scientific justification to be had. It's the fact that life begins at conception. It's the very instance being begins to evolve. Why do you think Tucker went down? Why do you think Tucker brought up the abortion issue? Because I don't think that's really on people's minds. Do you?
I mean, it wasn't. I didn't expect him to go that route, but
Yeah.
then looking later, El País, which is a popular Spanish newspaper, I believe they have an English edition. It covered all the stuff he said about, what certain issues, and one of them was abortion. And I just sort of thought his viewpoint was because Milei's like, I'm Catholic, and I thought it was more of like a conservative viewpoint in a sense, because a lot of conservatives here in the United States use religion as a grounds to kind of defend, their pro-life stance on it. But then it's kind of a gray area because libertarians debate on what this is. Abortion, pro-life or choice, which I'm not a fan of those words, but I understand Milei's argument from, he kind of puts it more sciencey, even though he says after the fact, hey, I'm Catholic. Well, as soon as that baby's conceived, it's a life. So you're not just talking about the mom's life or the woman's life, it's the baby's life. And so to me, that's a solid argument. But if you want to argue you don't want the state involved in funding abortions or something like that, which he didn't elaborate on, which would have been more, libertarian-esque
Yes.
argument about said thing, unless he's trying to say all these things because he's Catholic and he's trying to appeal to a bunch of Catholics in Argentina that believe the same thing. I would hope he would not go against use the state as some sort of vehicle to promote any of these things, but like go back on his word or anything. But yeah,
it's hard to say really. It just seems like I just wondered why Tucker brought it up. It's so important to Tucker's audience, and that's probably why he brought it up. Even though I don't know if it's as important to the audience down there, but we'll see. Yeah, with its own, as he points out, its own unique DNA, which is, well, it's true that women have a right to their own bodies. It's child's is in a woman's womb is not her body. Yeah, I mean, I see this. Yeah, I can understand. I don't think either side makes you a bad libertarian or a good libertarian. I think you can enabled and aggravated by power imbalances.
Yeah, because you're having control over someone that hasn't been born yet and making a decision. I mean, I can only speak to like my personal opinion. I would only ever have an abortion if there was something, the baby was going to die, fetus wasn't going to be viable or something like that. If they figured that out, if it wasn't going to live anyway. But that's the only thing, because it wouldn't have a life. But yes, I see where he's coming from that. But if other people agree to disagree, they can argue from other grounds. But
I just don't understand why Tucker brought that up. Yeah, so
it just seemed kind of.
And now we're going on to the Pope. This is probably my favorite part. He plays politics. He has a strong political influence, and he has shown great affinity for dictators such as Castro and Maduro. Yes, he has.
Yeah, you can see that smiling face in the handshake. It makes me sick. Like, it makes me, disgusted.
Yeah, he's on the side of these bloody dictatorships. Yeah, it's and right. And Fidel Castro was also murdered, and Tucker almost seems a little bit shocked by this. It's like you're actually, it's like you're calling these people murderers, like you're not supposed to call them murderers. I said, well, that's what they are. It's, it's.
And I just feel like Catholics, I mean, if you're a practicing Catholic, you must be at a weird position, because I know, I'm not Catholic, but these people, I know Catholics that it's like, oh my gosh, if the Pope says it, it's cool. Well, so are you the type that's going to be like, oh, the Pope hangs out with Fidel Castro and he thinks he's a cool guy, so I have to think that too? I mean, that is some crazy,
Yes,
uh,
he
like
has an
mob
yeah,
mentality.
he has an affinity for murderous communists. Yes, these are things that Milei says it's wonderful. In fact, he won't denounce them yet. He's
To
quite
me,
lenient to them. Yes.
it's just such a strange, like, confusing contradiction because it's like, okay, Christianity, love one another, love your enemy, but I'm like, these people murdered people, and then also Christians are like, thou shalt not murder, thou shalt not steal. They steal
Yeah.
too. I mean, they rob.
Yes, he's also lenient toward the Venezuelan dictatorship, which
Also, another thing.
lenient toward the entire left. Yeah, the Pope is totally bought by all this, even when they're true criminals. Yeah, and of course the Pope is from this country as well.
Yep, it's another.
He also takes social justice as a central element of his vision. I don't even like the term social justice. I actually call it social vengeance because I think that's more accurate. What is social justice? Milei asks. It's stealing the fruits of one person's labor and giving it to someone else. Yeah, yeah. He really describes it and puts it all in simple terms. I can see where he's. I guess I'm still kind of amazed that this is actually that people are actually responding to this in such a positive way because voters get it wrong so often.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it means two things. First, it's stealing. The problem with that is it's one of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not
Right.
steal.
Yeah.
To support social justice is to support stealing. This is what the translation says. So, yeah, it goes back to the 10 Commandments. So he's actually making a. And the other problem is it creates unequal treatment under the law. And I don't think it's fair. Yes, for some people to be rewarded while others are punished, all through the power of the state. Yeah, Milei really gets it. That wields a monopoly on violence. I mean, I don't know hear any so-called conservative talking like this. I mean, yeah, this is definitely a libertarian talking.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's how I think, at least from his economic standpoints.
And I'm really wondering how some of these people who at least are somewhat libertarian friendly or are libertarians can object to this guy at all. Okay, I think he's talking about the buildings now. He's talking about the cities of Buenos Aires. Yeah, talking about architecture. When you look at the architecture of liberalist Argentina is a style that is so fascinating and dazzling. Architecture of a glorious time, yeah. He's really smiling when he talks about this. He must really love architecture. He really gets into it.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I'm reading The Fountainhead right now, so I don't. I kind of was thinking about that while watching this because you had Rourke who values. Well, he values building things for himself, but just you could tell stuff from that's individual people designing something unique or beautiful, and where there's more freedoms, more economic freedoms, more free market, more exchange, you have more beautiful. I think architecture. I mean, I know beautiful is kind of subjective, but people are freely able to design what they choose. Where Milei's like the socialists, right? We have all this central planning and
Yeah.
ugly buildings that.
Well, really, I think socialism in many respects is the destruction of beauty. I mean, what would a socialist strip club look like? All the girls would go home with the same money, whether
Mhm.
they're popular or not.
And what would
You know,
they eat? I mean,
yeah.
ugh,
And then there'd be no incentive for the popular girls or the more pretty girls to go there. Although, yeah, so he goes into this. I think, yeah, and having been to Armenia, which just had unbelievably ugly buildings, it still had the Soviet era buildings. It was really wild to see that. But yeah, it's the architecture of a glorious time.
and I think it's like, I mean, I guess parts of Buenos Aires. not as bad as Cuba, but all the old classic buildings, because there's no money, they're kind of slowly, some of them getting, losing in bad shape.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
And you don't have
just
the
a
materials
sad
to
thing to
maintain
see.
them. You know. He mentions the Teatro Colon, which is considered one of the 10. National Geographic calls it one of the 10 best opera houses. And that opened in 1857. It's just a place where people go see the opera and ballet and classical music. It's yeah, it looks like it might be an amazing. And obviously, they keep going back and refurbishing it. But yeah, I can imagine what that looks like an opera house. I've heard some people describe. One person described Buenos Aires as Paris on steroids.
Paris on steroids.
Yeah, just like Paris, but a lot more extreme, maybe. But because Paris is supposed to be a beautiful city in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
But I've not been there. But yeah, so it's one of the best lyrical theaters. I'm not sure what he means by lyrical there.
Lyrical.
Yeah, maybe a musical theater, but yeah, that was admired around the world, which it still is. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not a opera expert. I mean,
yeah.
for sure, but
And then came the buildings that were more square and squat. Yeah, he's talking about not beautiful. Yeah, it's like
I especially
public works. Yeah,
the government buildings.
yeah.
You've seen a Federal Reserve building. I mean, I
Oh
saw
yes,
one. Very blocky, square.
yeah,
I mean, to me, it's not exciting at all.
yeah. And as he says, directly Soviet characteristics. The government buildings never are, and nowadays they're built kind of crazy in a lot of ways. Yeah. Mhm. There used to be a statue. They've since removed it. He talks about there was a statue that looked like the statue where he talks about the man having a hand cut backwards. Yeah,
I thought that was funny because it's like somebody trying to get like a handout or something. It was, I think, a joke against
he
the
was talking about
government.
the bribe. Yeah, and Tucker's laughing
Bribing.
again, which I love. Tucker's having a good time. He really is. I think he's really, and that helps. If the interviewers are having a good time, they're going to come back. And Milei's having a really good time too. Yeah. And the only winners are involved are those that have business with the politicians. Puerto Madero, is that a Puerto Madero? That must be another building he's talking about? Yeah. Puerto Madero. But that would be something. Oh, this is a neighborhood. So, yeah. The Puerto Madero waterfront. Yeah. So it's like it's more like the place where the constructed shipping lanes and stuff like that. Because obviously, what does Madero mean?
Madero is
Yeah. Puerto is port, but yeah,
Madero.
Madero.
Because like Madera is wood, so it could be like the wood.
Yeah, maybe the wood port. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's good.
There's wood.
Yeah, there's wood. Yeah. Tucker's got a piece of paper too. I don't know what he's doing with it. Maybe he had made some notes or something. So. Yeah, Tucker is definitely enjoying himself. Yeah. Talks more about has to do with leftist values, underlying values within leftist ideas, and envy, hatred, resentment. Yes, thank you. Unequal treatment under the law. And violence. If he's not read Ayn Rand, he definitely sounds like her.
I'm not sure. I know some other people in Argentina have read her, but I don't know if he has specifically.
Yeah. All that this socialist altruism ends up doing is contaminate the system with incentives that generate poverty. If you're poor, what can you build is limited by your poverty. Yes, he's smiling again. Everywhere and always, socialism is a violent, murderous, and impoverishing phenomenon. Oh,
There you go. I mean, in 3 words: violent, murderous, impoverishing.
yeah. You never hear any. Yeah, it's amazing that he's able to win with this. It's just shocking in a lot of ways. It's so awesome to hear this. Yeah, he's got the. Yeah, yeah. He's saying. No, yeah, he's telling America never embrace the ideals of socialism. Never allow yourself to be seduced by the siren song of social justice. Yeah. I hope America does listen. I really wonder how this is going to impact us.
I guess my only concern is that because it's Tucker, I mean, would people that aren't, conservatives or Republicans, would a Democrat, for example, I don't know, watch this? Or would they be like, oh,
Yeah.
that guy's crazy? Because we're so tribal
Yeah.
in this country. I mean,
Yeah.
oh, if you're not on my team, I'm not going to listen to you. Or you think differently than me, so I'm not going to listen. I mean,
Yeah.
or people talk over each other and don't listen, and it's just really, really unfortunate.
I doubt anybody on the left watches Tucker unless they watch him just to hate watch him or see how they can criticize him.
Because if
He's
it's the
talking about
group that
yeah,
left Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, I guess, they left because they were mad that Elon bought it, then definitely they didn't see anything.
yeah, and they're not censoring things. It's so ridiculous. I mean, yeah, and wage a cultural war every single day. This Milei's words, and we have to be careful. He says because they have no problem with getting inside the state and employing Gramsci's techniques. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, seducing the artists. Yeah, he's talking about all these things, seducing the culture, seducing the media, or meddling in educational content. Yeah. You need to be careful. Cut off their funding, yes, and force them into a fair fight. At the same time, we have to raise awareness among the business sector that the masses are necessary. Milton Friedman used to say the social role of an entrepreneur is to make money, but that's not enough. Part of their investment must include investing in those who defend the ideals of freedom. Oh, so that socialists can make no further moves. Yeah, he's so right on that. And this is where American business has completely failed, in my view. They've not done anything to invest in freedom. They don't seem to care.
I
don't know
feel
what you
like,
think, yeah.
yeah. I mean, depending on which state you live in, like, so many businesses, they have all these regulations.
Yeah,
There's all these taxes they have to pay, and they complain about it, which they should, because you're being taxed, like, literally to death. Payroll tax, or, for example, and then it's like, but you not realize that it's these policies that too many people are voting for,
yeah,
and it's just,
yeah. Yeah, so and if they don't do it, they will get into the state and use the state to impose a long-term judgment that destroys everything it touches. We need a commitment from all those who create wealth to fight against socialism. Yeah, this is to fight against statism, yes. And to understand if they fail to do so, that socialists will keep coming, yes. Since they try to leech off others without working, they are tireless in their pursuit. Yeah. Their leitmotif is to live off others, yeah. So they never give up on this mechanism to gain control. Yeah. We cannot take a day off. Yeah, that's what he's right. When we rest, socialism creeps in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you saw the Berlin Wall fall, you wouldn't have expected we'd still be fighting them.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's giving advice to Trump. He should continue his fight against socialism. I know why Tucker brought Trump up, just because that's who his audience loves, but I don't think Milei is anything like Trump.
No, and I don't know if he was saying this stuff about Trump because he got asked about it, but
Yeah,
I mean, I don't really think personally. I mean, I think Trump, on paper or in certain situations, will say he's against socialist things, but then under his administration, we spent a lot of money. Maybe shouldn't have been spent. So it's kind of like I don't know why Milei didn't look into that, but I mean, he's got so many problems in his own country that
yeah,
he was trying to save face. I don't know.
yeah. And I don't know how much Milei follows America anyway. But Trump, and then Trump promoted the worst tyranny we ever had in 2020 over nothing. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we'll see where he goes from here. Yeah, so Milei doesn't look. A part of me wonders if he really likes this question. So he is one of the few who truly understood that we're fighting socialism, that we're fighting the statists. Yeah, he understood perfectly that the generation of wealth comes from the private sector, which the state does not create wealth; the state destroys it. Yeah.
Because how do they get wealth? From me, from you, from everybody. People forget that they tax us so they can take our money, because they don't just make money. Or as
Yeah,
people say, money doesn't grow on trees. I mean, it's made from trees, but it obviously it's not grown on.
yeah. I think Trump understands some of the evils of the left, but I don't think he necessarily knows what the most effective way to fight them is. But at least he calls them what they are.
Yeah, I mean,
And he points out it does a poor job when it does try to create wealth. So I'd say, if I could humbly offer advice, says Milei, all I could say would be to double down on his efforts in the same direction, defending the aisles of freedom and refusing union. And of course, if Milei doesn't speak English, also everything he's getting about Trump is secondhand. I mean, that's another thing. How much does Milei know about Trump? Yeah.
Yeah, because I would argue to say, I mean, a lot of, depending on who you're talking to, you're going to get this crazy guy with orange hair on TV.
Yeah.
I mean, his hair's kind of, anyway, yeah.
It is part of the socialist agenda to, in fact, what post-Marxism attempts to do is give him a clear economic failure after the fall of the Berlin Wall, which he gets. Although socialism actually failed in 1961 when they had to build the wall in the first place. Yeah. Yep, exactly. Faced with that defeat, yeah. They moved to class struggle and to other aspects of life. Yeah, Milei gets all this. The struggle between black and white or Black Lives Matter, yeah. The entire LGBT lobby, yes. Everything related to radical feminism, which, because remember that the original cause of feminism is rooted in liberalism. Oh, it goes back to Jeremy Bentham in the mid 18th century,
Yeah, he went back to England instead of American, but that was, I mean, it started in England, the feminist thing.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I wonder how many viewers even know who Jeremy Bentham was. I mean, he was one of the early utilitarian, not a socialist at all, but just an early utilitarian thinker who was generally I think, in favor of freedom, but might have went elsewhere than he became. But this was also occurring in time, when there was the greatest happiness for the greatest number. Yeah.
Mhm. Which to me, if you want the greatest happiness, I mean, for the greatest number of people, don't use socialist policies, even though they say that that's what they're about. But I think giving people freedom to live the life how they want to live and is the best way to do that. Make choices for you. And then I would assume you're going to make a lot more people happy. I mean, it sounds simple, but it kind of is. You just get other people to stop making decisions for you that maybe you don't agree with.
Yeah, that's where Bentham really went down. Yeah, he was also one of the early proponents of animal rights too, which I find interesting. But
Interesting.
anyway, yeah. So this agenda also includes the agenda of man against nature. Yeah, so where man is supposedly harming nature. Yeah, which when the truth is that other temperature spikes he's talking about. It's a cycle exists regardless of man. He's just talking about climate change. Prices were truly feed, these prices would be fixed easily. Yeah, he understands that pricing is an important communication mechanism. He said we wouldn't need the state to regulate because every time the state regulates, things get even worse. Yeah. There's also a darker side to the agenda. He says it's a murderous agenda, the agenda of abortion. As a consequence of what humans are doing to the planet, they promote the murder of people still in the mother's womb. So basically, he's going after about population reduction, which I'm seeing that as abortion. Yeah, he's saying it's all anti-human. His eyes are wide open here too. Look at that. Yeah. A bloodthirsty policy. Yeah, he doesn't pull any punches dealing with these socialists. That's what I think is inspiring a lot of people. What do you think?
I think it is. I mean, if you're clearly anti-socialist, I think you love it. It's like finally somebody that's actually just is not afraid to call them. I mean, in other streams he's done, he's pieces of shit, assholes. Like, I mean, all the stuff. They're the scum of the earth. Where, like, sometimes here, people, oh, well, that's not real socialism. That's democratic socialism. Or that's, I don't.
Yeah, there's always democratic socialism, which is always the excuse, in which some humans, according to Milei, in which some humans believe they should decide who should live and who should not. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is probably the most powerful decision that anyone would ever have is over your own life.
It's the utmost expression of hubris. How can a person decide who will live and who will not? Yes.
Yeah.
And he's really getting, I want to say it clearly, the socialist hands are stained with blood. Yeah. Oh, they will always have blood on their hands. I can only imagine, the socialists really have to hate this guy. They've got to hate this guy because he's calling them what they are. Tucker is really, because they believe themselves God. Yep, that's true. They're heretics. Yep. So Milei does seem to be why Hayek called his last book The Fatal Conceit. Yes, exactly. Because to coordinate this kind of action, everything you have to know, and that has to do with another article by Hayek, The Use of Knowledge in Society. We're seeing a lot of Hayek in which he takes a more scientific and deeper explanation of Adam Smith's idea of the invisible hands. Yeah. I've not read Smith, but I've certainly read Hayek. Yeah. I don't know if Tucker really knows how to react here. I'm watching his facial expressions. He's definitely
Yeah, I don't know how well versed Tucker Carlson is in any kind of economic
Yeah,
anything. I know like old school conservatives would definitely know who Hayek is, who
yeah.
Mises is, who Friedman is. I mean, some of them would.
I've heard Tucker has attended Ron Paul events in the past. It's hard to say, really. I mean, Tucker's got to be somewhat well read, but I don't know. Uh, I think maybe it's just a reaction that says, "Boy, I don't hear any Americans talk like this. Why aren't they talking like this in America? At least not the ones he interviews."
Mhm.
Because I think for a lot, there's just this intriguing of how is this guy? How is this guy doing this? And because it's something that really never seemed possible. But yeah, but I'm glad it's working, so that's good. Yeah. So yeah, Smith's idea of the invisible hand. What he says is that to implement socialism, the people who do it would have to be omniscient, yes, omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, which they, of course, they aren't. They believe they are God. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
They are not God, and what's worse, politicians are such miserable low lives, especially the leftists. They're even below.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about like Peronismo in Argentina.
Yeah, the average
People,
population. Yeah,
I never understood why Americans had an obsession with Evita Perón and like wrote a musical about her.
yeah.
Oh, she's pretty. I was like, okay, and what? Like, this is what? It's like
I
this unnatural worship.
There have been a lot. I think sometimes women just latch on to someone. I can remember. Women would for 30 years after the assassination would worship Jacqueline Onassis. Jackie Kennedy. It was like she was on the cover of the tabloids every week. Only those who are below average. This is an agenda of envy. Yes, envy is a capital sin. No good can come from it. No good can come from murder. Yeah, no good can come from robbery. So going back to Pope Francis, yeah, why does he defend an agenda that supports murder, robbery, and envy? It's strange. Yeah, he does not like Pope Francis. Oh, at all. Yeah. In light of empirical evidence, he is the one. The Pope is the one who should be giving explanations as to why he defends an economic system that leads to poverty, misery, violence, and decadence. And if it were up to them, they would destroy the world. Yeah, that's something you should explain. Yeah. I'm not a socialist. I'm a libertarian. Yeah, it almost sounds like he's running more against the Pope than against. Never mentions his opponent. He never mentions his opponents in the race during this interview.
I know. I don't know if it's because Tucker didn't talk about it.
Yeah,
And then Argentina has a lot of political parties. Like there's a bunch of different like conservative ones, and then there's a
yes,
bunch of socialist ones.
yeah. Well,
Unless that's a different culture, because like America is like we're slashing, like everybody's yelling at everybody that's not on their. And even our own GOP like debate, everybody was yelling at everybody, and you're all the same party, although you've got different, slightly different beliefs. Maybe
well,
some.
well. Also maybe just because Pope, Tucker has an American audience, and he knows that Pope Francis is somebody that most Americans know who he is.
Hmm.
They don't know who Massa is. They don't know who Bullrich is.
Hmm.
So that could be. I mean, yeah, and there's what six 1/4 of the population of the U.S. is Catholic, which is still more than Argentina's overall population. So
So
that's a.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know who's all watched this. I'd be very curious to know though. So I will not do business with China.
I thought that was like a hot take.
I won't do any business with any communist. Yeah. I am a defender of freedom, although peace and democracy, there is no room for communists there. There's no room for the Chinese there. There's no room for Putin there.
Yeah.
There's no room for Lula there.
Yeah, Lula's another fun. He's poor. I mean, that's what I feel like. I mean, here we transition, right? We're all pissed off at the Democrats, so we elect a Republican and then go back mad at the Republican and elect a Democrat. But then I feel like Latin America, it's like a bigger extreme. It's, oh, we're sick of socialism, so let's get this conservative-ish guy in here. And then Brazil had Bolsonaro, which people parallel to Trump. And then it's like, oh, well, let's get this socialist guy that was president before, that was a criminal, and bring him back. And now he's like super old and talks slow. And I mean, he has an education of like a 5th grade student, which isn't totally his fault. He had to go to work. Lula did. I mean, just in the mines, but
lack of schooling is not disqualified. He had life experience, but yeah. But yeah, so here goes Milei with
which you kind of have to think about Brazil with Argentina because of the South America business with each other and exchange things and
I don't see how realistically that's possible. I don't see how he can really avoid doing business with Brazil or really any country that they have a border with. And they have a long border with Brazil. I mean,
yeah,
he says, we want to be the moral lighthouse. Yeah. For our continent, we want to be defenders. I mean, freedom, democracy, diversity, yes.
And Brazil's a huge country, so they could have, I mean, socialism, I'm scared what's going to happen because what could happen down the road, but they can export a lot of things. They're still rich in a lot of natural resources. I mean, that's why people loved Brazil when they conquered, or like when the Portuguese did, well, there's Brazil wood, and like, I mean, Brazil still competes, I think, with Argentina in a sense of who can export the most beef, but so I don't know if that was such a smart thing. I get him insulting Lula per se, but I wouldn't like go beyond, oh, Brazil's terrible. Argentina's not going to hang out with Brazil or be friends with. Yeah.
Is he going to call off the soccer games too? I mean, that will make people very unhappy. And where are they going to get their Amazonian plant medicines? I mean, there's no Amazonian plant medicines in Argentina, but they can get them from Brazil. Brazil has lots of them.
Yes.
Argentinians can't trade. If they want to trade with China or with Russia or with Brazil, that's up. But then he says that's up to each Argentinian. So it seems like to me he doesn't want sanctions, but he wants to discourage it.
Which I don't know. I mean, China, that's to me complicated because I mean, at least us as Americans, I mean, we look at all our stuff. How much of it is made in China because it can be made? Too much of it,
yeah. It's be very hard to disconnect from China, but I think the world would be better off if we did do it eventually.
But I mean, so I kind of see why he doesn't want to associate them with them because of the communist point. But then that's probably the one thing I'm wondering. Okay, how is that going to be practical? Like right now, I know whatever he does, if he should be elected, is going to be a slow, gradual.
Oh yeah, just like it was a slow, gradual way we got intermeshed with them. And he says, I know people are praying for me. That brings people joy to know that people go to the Kotel, the waving wall in Israel. Yeah, and pray for me. Yeah. So his friendliness to Israel, I don't know what to make of that.
Because that's another, at least, I mean, my American goggles are on, but that's another issue. People have different opinions on Israel.
Life without freedom is not worth living. So that's And he's really smiling right now. I was once asked if I'd be willing to give my life for the ideals of freedom, and I am willing. So, and I think he's really. I want to be an embodiment of the way of living in freedom. Yes. Slavery is a horrifying concept, and I will fight for the ideals of freedom. So, as long as I need to, this is whatever the consequences are. Doing the right thing is non-negotiable. I think Tucker is he's fascinating because like I don't see any Americans talking like this. And Tucker's wondering, where are they? That's my viewpoint on Tucker, just the way he's looking at this. Maybe he looks this way all the time, though.
And I kind of had like this overarching idea. It's like, does the United States have to become Argentina for people to wake up and be like, oh my God, we need freedom. More freedom. I mean, we have a lot of freedom, like compared to Argentina right now, but I feel like we're blind. Oh, we have all this stuff. It's not going to get taken away. Well, if it can happen there, it can happen anywhere if you get the wrong people in there.
Yeah. But Americans do not. If you're an American, you haven't left America. You don't know what poverty looks like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he's talking about the violence now. I'm not worried because I will govern according to the law. Possible riots, which I think will be possible, and I'm curious to know how he's going to have to react to this. And the law will be respected, and people will pay for their mistakes. So he's basically saying, if people riot and get violent, he's going to round them up. I hope that works. He's talking about the first round of reforms, and the second round of reforms take place. They'll be able to leave behind their public sector jobs.
See, that I kind of love because it's like offering a solution.
Yes.
I mean, he's betting a lot on himself, but it's like, okay, I'm going to have people see my way of things. And if you privatize things and give people more incentives because they're going to make more money, of course they're going to go to it and go, wow, I see the light, like the end of the tunnel.
Well, the Libertarian Party in America in the past has said, we'll just do a hiring freeze. I mean, don't fire anybody, but just stop hiring people. And I mean, that it doesn't happen immediately, but it does eventually, get people out. They will be paid better, he says. So he says the private sector is going to pay them better, which if they still want to make trouble, we will enforce the law. I think he's worried about, if anyone tries to riot, anyone who breaks the law will be put in prison. So he's addressing the possible issue of riots, but and of course, this is what another thing the left does. They do they call everything a peaceful protest, even though it isn't.
I see a lot of yelling. I mean, depending on what you're yelling about, but you get bad quick. Or insulting.
Well, they'll call it a peaceful protest, even though they're standing out and blocking, traffic, including emergency vehicles and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're really they really try to provoke the various. I will be willing to make sure that our justice system is truly independent, can act freely. Anyone who breaks the law and violates the Constitution will have to pay for it. I mean, and the justice system has to be particularly independent. I don't know what reforms he'll make, but truly independent. I don't see any reason for them not to be on our side. Otherwise, it's not justice. If he smiles, he seems kind of naive here in a way. Sometimes I wonder if sometimes I wonder, does Milei really know what he's getting into?
I wonder.
Yeah.
I know he's like a representative, like right now, but I think, or whatever the equivalent is, a diputado, like he represents. Yeah. He got elected to that, but I mean, this is going to be, if he gets a president, obviously that's a huge step up.
Oh, yes. I mean, and he's in Congress, but you go in and think, okay, and you realize your enemy is a lot more powerful than you think it is. And that makes me wonder where he's going to go with this. That was a good interview. I don't know if he'll, I wonder what, obviously that interview is probably not going to help him much with Argentine voters. Do you think he was trying to what do you think his motivation was for taking it? Tucker is probably the biggest news personality in the English speaking world, but what do you think his motivation was for doing an interview with Tucker? Did he just want to get the message out, or?
I think it was a great way to get the message out. I
Yeah,
think he wanted more visibility
yeah,
because honestly, I'm thinking outside of like a few libertarians that I know before
yeah,
his win, his primary victory, there was very few libertarians that knew who he was. And the other people outside of that were people that I know, colleagues and friends that are from Argentina knew who he was. But
yeah.
anybody else, who's that guy? Who's the guy with the I mean, they wouldn't know. Who's the guy with the crazy hair with the
Yeah,
jacket?
I've noticed. I've talked to quite a few people. I've had a few economists on here, and he seems to have, and I've talked to quite. I think. Let's see. There was Maria. There was. I've talked to a couple Americans living down there,
Hmm.
and I've talked to one. I think more people I've talked to are outside of there than are there, but they're all fluent in Spanish, and they've all been paying attention to Milei for a while. So,
Hmm.
uh, I don't know. I suppose Spanish libertarians, because maybe they do keep an eye on or Spanish speaking libertarians keep an eye on what's going on in the other countries. I don't know. I mean, Americans, we do sometimes watch what's going on in the other English speaking countries, but not that much.
Yeah,
So,
because honestly, if I didn't know Spanish, I wouldn't probably know any of these things, or at
yeah,
least if I didn't have an interest in these other countries. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean,
Have you been to any of them?
Latin America, or
Any of the Spanish speaking countries?
oh, oh, I was in, I've been to Spain and then Costa Rica, which
Yeah,
Central America.
yeah. I've been to Spain. I've been to Mexico many times. I've been to Colombia and Peru. But yeah,
Mhm.
and this certainly makes, and I had somebody on a few days ago talking about El Salvador. Do you think do you think there's anybody he compares that you could compare him to uh, in the Spanish speaking countries?
I mean, compared to like his personality or his,
Yeah, his personality, his style, or anything like that. I mean, I sometimes think about maybe Nayib Bukele in El Salvador, or maybe
yeah, I think in terms of like maybe Bukele is not a rock star. He doesn't have, I
yeah,
mean, but he's younger. He's more fired up. He definitely, I mean, promotes the Bitcoin thing.
yeah,
Bukele also kind of changed, although he built a massive prison, but it was for
yeah,
all the gangsters, the MS-13, all the cartels and all that, which was I mean, that was insanely crazy. But like,
yeah. I don't like clean sweeps either. Although but yeah, I don't like the clean sweeps either. When you're just rounding people up, it never looks good.
yeah,
because
and they were
you
like,
don't really know if they're all you don't really know if they're all guilty.
men, grown men, like in their underwear, like their boxers, like on the crouching, like running, and they were sending them all to jail, which maybe some of them were deserved to go, but
Yeah,
it just was like it was quite a dramatic scene. I'm like, okay, kind of have a certain level of human dignity here, like guys. But I
yeah,
think he's kind of Milei, like his whole personality and his aesthetic thing. I think is unique. I don't think there's anybody like him
yeah,
exactly, that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, I know there's libertarians in Latin America or
yeah,
free market people, but they're maybe a little more softer
yeah.
than well, not like, I don't know if soft is the right word, but
And whether or not they're winning, I mean, I do
yeah.
sometimes ask about. I've also asked about Maria Corina Machado, but who's in Venezuela. But it's really hard to say. I don't know who else is out there.
Yeah.
I know. AMLO in Mexico has already commented on his attacks on the Pope. It seems like that's very interesting. When you think about when I look back and think about Pope John Paul going to Poland and inspiring, and I think he probably did make a difference in bringing down the Berlin Wall and inspiring the Poles to resist the communism. And then you look at Pope Francis now; it's like, oh, it's the opposite. It's so wild.
It's crazy.
And Pope John Paul was the first non-Italian pope in hundreds of years. I mean, it had really just been a club, of one Italian to the next. I think the Vatican did that on purpose. They wanted to thumb their nose at the communists. Says, okay, we'll elect a Pope. We'll take what's the biggest communist country? Well, Poland. We'll elect a Polish Pope. And I don't know what their motivation was, but it seems like that. Yeah. So, yeah. What else has stood out for you about Milei? What else do you think's making him really successful?
Well, I think another thing is because of the whole rebel thing, the rock star thing, he's really getting young people excited.
Yes.
And I think that's important because I think younger people, if we look at statistics in the United States, it's the old people that still vote, not younger people. And then younger people tend to be more into socialist ideas because maybe they don't understand, they haven't gotten their first paycheck yet, or they think socialism is going to, I mean, they care about other people and they think socialism is the way to solve that. But he's just, and younger people, I want them to feel involved and make political, changes, but positive changes, freedom related changes, because freedom should be, he really sells it. I mean, he makes it sexy. If I could say sexy, he's like we said, it's like the whole package.
Yeah, I almost are you you're kind of crushing on him a little bit, aren't you?
Well, his ideas. I don't know. He's probably got some friends. That's cool with him.
And he's probably. I wonder if there's some throwing about it. That's fine, but I think Milei. But I think he's making the moral case, as one person says. He said the market never fails. And I said, yeah, you're right. It never fails. It's really it really seems to be a powerful message that I think needs to get out there more. Have you paid any attention to the people that are around him, like Victoria Villarreal or anybody like that, or Diana Mondino, or some of these other people?
Well, I did look into Victoria Villarreal.
Yes.
Yeah, she's. I know they label her as ultra conservative, and I can see how it comes off as that. She's from a military family.
Yes.
She clearly she's a lawyer, so I kind of see like the contrast. She's like the serious, all business type, but she also knows how to say, well, in her own, toned down way, that she's anti-leftist, and she's so anti-leftist, in fact, that she has a nonprofit that she's in charge of that focuses on victims that were murdered by like leftist. They're called montoneros, like leftist Peronist guerrillas, not like the guerrilla warriors, not the, just in case the audience, well, I'm sure the audience might know, but not gorillas, the animals.
Yes.
Yeah, I understand. Argentina's got a history.
Guerrilla warriors. Yes, I understand the various terrorist groups. Something like an Argentinian equivalent of the Shining Path. And they certainly did a lot. The Shining Path certainly did a lot of damage in Peru, FARC in Colombia. And from what I'm also hearing is that some of these groups may actually have gotten their funding and support from Fidel Castro.
That's totally.
It's possible, Martha certainly talked about that. There's a lot of evil stuff going on, and they just seem to be there to destroy. And I guess the problem is it's just a lot easier to destroy than it is to build. It really is. And maybe they just do that because they need to feel like they can do something. And that's very, I do think some people in politics, it's very easy to lose sight of what you're for, though, and start to over focus on what you're against. And that's often when people go over to the dark side. And Milei, I think you'll agree, he seems like he's very much he's pro-capitalist. He's not just anti-socialist, which is a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What would you say that about the others, or
I didn't. I know both of the others, and then Carolina Piparo, who's running for, I think it's mayor. Yeah, the mayor.
Carolina
Piparo. Piparo, so Piparo. She's the blonde lady with the glasses. There's a picture.
Blonde lady with the glasses. Catalina
Or Carolina, like Carolina.
Catalina Piparo, yes. Oh, Catalina Piparo, yes.
And they're both, I mean, I'm not going to say they're
Oh,
libertarians because
yeah, she's
they're,
hot.
yeah, they're both like conservative. I mean, they from the conservative.
Okay,
But
Catalina Piparo, yeah, she's only on the Spanish Wikipedia.
and she kind of had the fire. She does slam leftists. I mean, pretty hard too.
I think sometimes it's also easier for a woman to do that because they don't seem as scary. But yeah, and she went from Avanza Libertad, and now it's La Libertad Avanza. That's a coalition. But yes, she's running for the Gobernadora, which is governor of the Provincia de Buenos Aires. Yes, so the province of Buenos Aires. Yeah, and she's got 20. Yeah, so that's her electoral history here. And
because the three of them did vote, I think, the other day about lowering taxes for workers.
yes,
And there's all this because the two women, especially, were former like conservative. I mean, coalition Republican-esque, because the last conservative that Argentina had was Macri,
yeah,
and Macri was like, "Oh, I'll lower taxes," and then didn't do it. So I think there's a lot of pressure that way, but I hope because they're with Milei that they would understand the need to lower taxes because that is a great step in obviously the right direction. Their financial situation.
yeah. Yeah, she's got this picture of herself with Milei on Twitter. Milei kind of has a James Bond look in that picture. I wonder if that's what he's got going for him. Catalina, yeah, she's got the glasses. She looks like this is good because she looks like an intellectual here. National candidate for governor of the province, yeah. And that's the biggest province in Argentina because there's looks like there's lots of interesting stuff here too. People, pictures of Milei. I've been adding a lot of followers on Twitter lately, so I don't know if these people. I hope Milei knows what I'm doing out here because I'm really trying to give this some coverage because I have to admit it makes me want to move there. It seems like I've heard nothing but nice things about it. So, and do you have any friends down there? Or do you know anybody down there? Or?
A few. I met a few. Well, one I had a translator friends because a lot of translators when I go to my American Translators Association conference are from Argentina or that area. Although some have moved to Uruguay because Uruguay is a lot freer.
Yes.
And then a lot have left Argentina because of all this policies over the years. I mean, hundreds of years of dictatorships, socialism.
Yeah.
Ew, just all the bad isms.
Yeah, it has. Well, this has been a great talk, Caitlin. I know I joined one. I think you manage a Facebook group. I just joined. So.
Okay.
Yeah, Latinos for Liberty or something like that. But yeah, because I want to promote because it seems like I've actually gotten a lot more views lately because of all this Milei stuff. It's been great having you on here.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you have anything else you want to say before we go?
Well, what I want everybody to remember, my favorite quote: "Viva la libertad, carajo!" Long live liberty.
Viva la libertad, carajo. Okay.
Yes.
Carajo. Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I definitely need to improve my language skills, but it's been very interesting. So, okay, please go check out my Substack, like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel, check out my novel Escape from the Village. This is Chris Baker, and we're for Fountainhead Forum, and we're out.